So how do we choose the right tool? So we've had a look, at all of the kind of main ones and what they can do, what they're capable of. Um, well, the first thing we need to do is we need to match the tool to the need. So, obviously, if I need to create some logos, then I need to go to an image generation tool. Or if I need to do some document analysis, then I need to go to a text, AI tool. So for general productivity, what I'd say is start with ChatGPT or Gemini because they're quite, or even Claude as well. They're quite versatile and user-friendly, and they're affordable. Even ChatGPT with the Pro version is like $20 a month, which is around €18, I think. And Gemini, you can get that with your Google subscription. They do introductory promotions and stuff where you can get it for like a $5 a month. But I think it only works out at like $7 a month or something like that. So they are quite affordable, and you can also play around with the free versions. For document analysis, Claude or Notebook LM. Notebook I haven't mentioned too much, but it's essentially a Google product that uses Gemini in the background. And the reason that these two tools would be the best is probably the context window. Now, ChatGPT has caught up as well with the massive context window. They've got 1 million tokens, but it's still quite it's the Claude and Gemini are still probably the most popular ones for the massive document analysis. For Microsoft users, it's probably best just to stick with Microsoft Copilot, because it's already sitting there ready for you to use. It's already integrated within the Office applications, so it's quite easy. There's no real barrier to access if you're already using Microsoft products. If you want to research, probably Perplexity, Gemini, or even Claude, because they have search integration and they will cite things, so you can double check their citations and you can check that they're not hallucinating the sources or anything like that. For coding, then, again, a lot of these models, weren't too good at the coding at the start, but they're getting better and better. The best one's probably still GitHub Copilot and ChatGPT Codex, but Claude, its code product, Anthropic's product, and Google's product, they're all getting very good now as well. So they're all real easy to use, and a lot of the time it's already integrated within the IDE, so that means that it's sitting at your fingertips ready to go. So if you want to start to play around with these things, start to check these tools out for yourself. What I'd say is create an account first. Check if your organization has enterprise access, if you're using Copilot, for example. The first thing that you want to do is review the privacy settings. Start with simple prompts. Okay, you want to be clear, specific, provide context, and iterate based on the results. Learn the interface as well. Explore different settings. Try and upload file upload features and things like that to see what you can upload, what types of files you can upload. Test different types of prompts as well. Just play around with the thing, and do so safely. Don't be putting in any sensitive data. You want to try different types of requests, but you don't want to be sharing any of your sensitive information. So just be very careful, because a lot of the information, especially if you're using the free version, it's going to be used to train the model. So essentially your information is going to be public. So you don't want to share anything that you wouldn't want put into the public domain with these tools. So once you have created the account and everything, what you can do is you can start prompting, and the best prompts are the ones that kind of have this structure. So you want to give the role or the context. So you want to give the model, basically give it a context or a role to play. Give it a task that you want, that somebody that was in this role could do, and then give it the constraints and also the format in which you want your output. So if you stick to this kind of structure, it's good for keeping the model, keeping the answers relevant to what you're looking for. So an example here might be, you're a university professor preparing a lecture. Okay, that's the role or the context. Create an outline for a 1-hour lecture on climate change suitable for first-year students. Okay, so that's the task. And then the constraints include 5 main sections and 3 subtopics each, and then format as a numbered outline. Okay, so you can see that is these 4 things here, and that is a pretty good descriptive prompt that we could use. So what you want to do for better results is be specific about the format and length, and if possible, provide examples. Use follow-up prompts to refine, to make the answer better. Ask for alternatives if you're not satisfied, and include relevant context. And what's also a good thing to do is ask the model, if you have any questions for me that you need, to complete the task, ask me the questions before completing the task. Okay, that's always a good one because if you don't know if you've left anything out, so you can just say to the model, ask me if I've left anything out. What you don't want to do is be vague or ambiguous. If you're going to be vague, then it's going to be vague right back to you. Assuming that the model knows your context is also something you should avoid. And never accept the first result without looking at it. Okay, that's just definitely don't do that. Overly complex multi-part questions, try and avoid that. Try and keep it with, doing one task at a time. And definitely don't include sensitive information. That's a big no-no. So what you can also do is you can combine a lot of these tools. So we'll look at a couple of examples here. So let's say if I wanted to do some research, I might go to Perplexity for my initial citations. Okay, so the initial kind of list of research papers that I want to look at. Then I might go to Claude and get it to analyze the papers. And then I could go over to ChatGPT and get it to draft a presentation or a document based on Claude's output. And then finally I could use Grammarly to polish ChatGPT's draft presentation. So this would be one way that we could start with this model, feed its output into this model, feed its output into this model, and then feed its output into this. And at the end, hopefully have a nice, fully polished research document. What about content creation? Well, we could start with ChatGPT to brainstorm ideas and give us some outlines. Then we could go over to Midjourney and generate supporting images. Or we could even just do that within DALL-E that's integrated within ChatGPT, but just for demonstration purposes. Then we could go to Claude to write detailed content, and then we could go Notion AI to organize a format. So again, we could go through this whole content creation workflow just from starting with brainstorming to having the finished product out the other side. An academic workflow if you wanted to, let's say, write a literature review. So you go to Gemini to process large research papers, go to ChatGPT to summarize the key findings, Claude to write the literature review, and then Perplexity to verify the facts and find sources. So you could actually, use these AI tools to double check the other AI tools' answers. So what we're basically saying here is use each tool for its strengths, develop consistent prompt templates and build personal workflow libraries. So if you do find that there are certain prompts that work, then stick with that, save that prompt and start to formalize, start to use the same template over and over again. So of course, when we're looking at all of these tools, cost is a big thing that we need to consider. So if you're just an individual user, I would say start with the free tiers. And then, if you want to go to the pro versions of these tools, typically, it's not going to be any more than like $40 per month. If you're in an academic department or something like that, check for discounts obviously, and consider your enterprise plans that you're already a part of. In industry, similarly, you would want to check your enterprise plans and see what volume of users that you have and what kind of discounts that you can typically get for the amount of users, and then try and budget for training and change management. So you want to stick with the free if you're only an occasional user, and if the tasks that you're getting it to do are non-critical, and if you're just testing the tools and you're learning about them, definitely stick with the free. And if it's just small personal projects and nothing to do with work, then again, I would stick with the free versions. But you need to upgrade if you're going to be using these things daily for within your work. And if you need the latest models and features, then obviously you need to upgrade. If you want faster response times and no limits as well on the amount of times that you can use a model, then you're going to need to upgrade. And of course, if you're working with sensitive data, you'll definitely need to upgrade. You'll have to go to a package where you can be guaranteed that they're not going to be using your data to train the model. So on that, how is the data handled by all of these different models? So with ChatGPT, we can opt out of training. So what that means is that your data isn't used for training, and we can get this, in the pro version, the enterprise version. With Claude, it's not used for training. It is in the free if you by default, but you can say to it, don't use my data for training. Gemini, you can delete the activity, and if you have Google Workspace, then you have a lot more enhanced controls, and you do have a lot more privacy there. And then with Copilot, it's your data is protected there because it's tied to your Microsoft account. So Microsoft essentially don't let any of your data outside of your organization. So the good thing to do is review each platform's privacy policy before you go and start using them. You want to use enterprise versions for sensitive information. Never put in confidential information into the free versions, okay, because that information is going to be used to train the model. Consider on-premises solutions for highly sensitive data. You don't want to, if it's really highly sensitive, I would stay away from these things. And implement organizational guidelines for AI use. That's very important. So if there are certain guidelines within your organization that are just going to prevent you from using these tools, then that's what you have to do. You have to just not use them. Regular audits of AI tool usage is always good as well. So it's good to understand who in your organization is using these tools and how they're using them, and how often they're using them. Just basically looking at their overall usage. So the thing about this, as you probably heard me mention a few times, this whole landscape is changing all the time. It changes rapidly. There's new models, there's new features, new tools. They're released monthly, sometimes even weekly. So staying informed is very important. And how do you stay up to date? Well, the quickest way to get information is usually through blogs. So these will be just online articles, and all of the different companies have their own blogs that they will update all the time. You have different communities, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Discord, on Reddit. So there's loads of online communities. There's newsletters out there as well that you can follow, and also webinars and workshops. I'm sure you've seen that there's no shortage of these courses about these tools. So that's always good to stay current as well. Some of the major updates. So new model releases, obviously you always want to keep your eye out for them. Price changes and new tier offerings. So like last year or even 6 months ago, OpenAI, for the free version, it would have been ChatGPT 3.5, and then the pro version was ChatGPT 4. But then whenever ChatGPT 5 came out, it became the pro version, and ChatGPT 4 is now the free version. So you can see that the free tiers are constantly updating as well. Feature additions, is there voice, is there coding capabilities, all of that, and integration announcements as well is always good to keep your ear on them, and policy updates and restrictions on the usage of the models. So it's always good, to try and keep up to date with all of the news that's happening. Sometimes it does feel confusing because it's happening so rapidly, but all we can do is, try to stay informed.